Hey YouTube, this time we're going to be checking out a video. Oh, it's called Andrew Wilson Schools Marc Lamont and Hill on free speech. Let's find what it is. Haven't watched this one yet.
Get essayed, and if you call your assailant the quote F slur, you go to jail. Right? Some country you got there. Some country you got there. By the way, let's point this out that progressives have for years, as these guys say, hey, we don't want to put in hate speech laws and have people arrested and this and that. They've been doing the same type of stuff for years. They do depersoning, debanking, deplatforming, keeping people away from their cash. If you touch on any issues that they don't like, they've been doing that for years to conservatives. So they're doing the exact same thing that the government over there is doing. They're just using the private marketplace to do it. So what they do is they will go on these massive campaigns to deperson a human being from society because they have wrongthink, or they say a word that makes somebody else upsetty spaghetti, right? That's what.
Yeah, I mean, what he's saying here is entirely true. You say one thing and no, actually, not even and say something wrong. If you think the wrong thing and they catch a whiff of you even thinking something that they think is wrong, as in wrong thing, you start to be just entirely ostracized. There is no way out of it.
But that's what they do. And the fact of the matter is like, who gives a who cares if this woman didn't care? Who cares if she was like, you know what, I am homophobic, and I said it because I'm homophobic. That's her business, right? You can say what you want.
Yeah,
you're supposed to, at least in free nations, and that's not what you have there. And that was Tucker Carlson's point. You don't have a free nation there. You have a nation which is under a dictator.
Hang on. Out of interest, Andrew, would you use that word?
Sure, you use it all the time. It's one of the best ways to describe friends.
Right? Would you use it? Would you use it on a show like this?
It's not meant to be. Look, it's not meant to be. Can I say it?
Would you say it? I mean, would you normally use a word like that?
Well, I wouldn't say it for the purposes of TOS, but I mean, if I was allowed to, sure, it's one of my favorite words to say. There's nothing wrong with the word. What happens is this. This word is not even being used as a homophobic slur, and it hasn't since I was a kid. Okay, that's the truth. People call each other this all the time, for literally for fun, just because it's fun. You'll go, you like run into a buddy of yours. What's up, F slur? Right? You don't care, and you give each other a high
five. I don't think that's true, though.
It's fun. It is true. Look,
no, I think if you ask people, they will tell you it is often used in a derogatory way and offensive way intended to demean them, and it's done all the time. I don't think we can dispute that.
But you know what? Everything, you can use any word as derogatory if you want to, or you can use words and they're not derogatory. It depends.
Any word heard, if it has a derogatory intent meant behind the word, you could use just about any word, just as he said in this case. It doesn't matter. Words that were originally meant to be derogatory are used in non-derogatory ways, and completely mundane words are used in derogatory ways all the time. It's about what you mean when you say it.
In the context, and we're social creatures. I'm tired of people acting like socially everybody's. We know that there's context for words, and when you say in proper context this word to buddies and people in this, whatever, it's not a problem socially, and it never has been. And Mark might shake his head, but I bet you in high school he was calling half of his friends that word, and they were probably calling it to him back.
100%.
Why? Because it's funny. That's why it's funny. And
were you Marc Lamont Hill?
So here's. Was I? No, but
you've never used any derogatory term at school about anyone as a joke?
You're asking a different question now than okay.
Well,
now
just generally.
a different question. His question was that again. The answer to the first question is no, I didn't use the F word in high school as he alleged. Second question is, have I ever used an offensive term? Absolutely. When I was a child, but as an adult, I like to think that I've grown beyond using the words that I used as a child. And I agree that social context matters, and I agree that we should always consider social context. We live in a society where people are still abused, where people are still slandered, where people are still physically assaulted, where people are marginalized. And that F word is used very often to do, and it's often accompanied by harm. And so if we know that, I agree, when you walk up to your friend and give him a high five and use that word, you may not be attempting to smuggle in homophobia. I don't think you are. But what I'm saying is we're normalizing a word that still accompanies harm and still kind of normalizes what we do and how we treat as a society, LGBTQI folk. And so I'm just saying,
okay,
why don't we pick a different word that doesn't cause all this hullabaloo?
All right, the bigger issue.
The problem is like, because they're not as fun. And the reason is the more that you try to make these pushbacks, these social pushbacks, and tell people what they can and can't say, it makes them want to say it more. And you know what?
People love taboos. The more taboo something is to say or do, the more it drives people to want to do or say that thing. It's just some basic stuff here. Or you do just a tiny bit of thinking, and just like, why do you think that you go past like a group of kids in school, and they're cussing a storm up because they've been told not to?
But Mark, like that's what happens the second you start making social pushback and say, hey, this word you've been calling your friends and you guys have been joking around for years saying this stuff, you're not allowed to say it anymore because now somebody's going to get too upset about it. It literally gives them incentive to say it more. That's what happens. That's how social context actually works.
But that's not what I'm saying.
You know, if you guys wouldn't make a big deal out of it, if you guys wouldn't make, hang on, Mark, almost done. If you guys wouldn't make a big deal out of it, we wouldn't have a big deal. Right, but you guys make the big deal out of it.
All right. Why does nobody get arrested for calling Donald Trump?
Well, no, but you know what? The thing is interesting because I do think
it's not just interesting. It's probably the most egregious thing you could possibly call somebody. Is comparing him directly to Adolf, who murdered 12 million people, who gassed 6 million Jews in concentration camps. Right, the idea that
the Americans should bring in some speech.
But the idea that is not an arrestable offence by comparison to using the F word against a gay person seems to me to be completely disproportionate.
Well, you're absolutely right. But here's my thing. I think that the thing is an interesting thing because actually this proves that it's not a left or a right wing issue. Because actually, since the assassination of Charlie,
because they think it's on different levels. Well, they think that because they're the ones saying it to you, that they're allowed to say it. It's rules for thee, but not for me.
Kirk, and those two attempts on Donald Trump's life, the right has been saying, watch your rhetoric. And they understand that whilst people aren't calling for violence against them, speaking about them as is increasing the likeliness of someone thinking, oh my God, I better get a gun and do something about it. So they understand
they're not calling for their
not
arrest,
calling for
dude.
Violence, but calling them words starts that dehumanization that leads to violence. So thank you for proving my point.
This is sick. This is actually sick what you're saying, dude. What you're saying is that you're calling for people to be arrested for words that make you upset. That's sick. This is the country of John Locke. Hang on. This is the country of John Locke. This is the country that was supposed to, we adopted our constitution based on these principles of free speech. And, you know, you sick bastards are running around actually calling for the arrest of people because they say mean words. What the hell is wrong with you?
This is the thing with free speech. You can still make your point. You can still make your point. What is it that you can't say? It's not my fault that people can't articulate themselves well. You can talk about crime statistics based on gender and sexuality and race.
Yeah, free speech should be just being able to say whatever you want. I mean, I don't say some things that often, and just because I choose not to, but I'd very much like the freedom to be able to use whatever the hell word I want to use. It doesn't matter. I would very much want to I'd like to not be arrested for using the word like Nazi or some words that YouTube actually doesn't like. That is what freedom of speech should be.
Maybe what?
Why
you just can't use discriminatory words to do it.
Yeah, but the point is, and they get to this a little bit later, is who gets to decide what is discriminatory and what is not. If I use a slur towards somebody who it wouldn't be offensive to, is that still discriminatory? Like if I scream the N-word at a white guy, is that a racist statement? Is that discriminatory? No, I wouldn't say so. So is it offensive? There's gray areas, but who gets to decide that?
it doesn't even matter if it's offensive or not. That somebody should be able to say something that's offensive without getting into legal trouble for it. Now, of course, there can be like social consequences as for saying something, but that's outside of the law. That's just because people didn't agree with something you said, and so they just decided, I don't like that person. That's fine, just don't bring the law into it.
Angry because she's been assaulted and is in hospital and is firing off her angry thoughts while she said she had a head injury, and she uses this F word, and because of that she ends up with a conviction.
Well, hold on, Piers. We only got her side of the story. Reading the articles, it says that there was a series of abusive and homophobic messages.
Yeah.
Those were then showed. The friend said
they weren't homophobic.
The friend that she said
they weren't homophobic.
Hold on, that's
Even
what
they weren't aimed at somebody for their sexuality.
But so what if I go up to someone in the street? So if I go up to someone in the street and start attacking them?
Well, okay. By comparison, if I use the N word against
I still haven't had a chance to respond to
right? Or if I use the N word against Andrew, is that a racist slur against him? No.
No. So if I go up in the street and start,
there has to be some intent.
No,
surely.
if I start going up to someone in the street and screaming anti-Semitic things at them, and then it turns out they're not Jewish, the police aren't going to be like, oh well. Like you went to attack someone based on the.
Hang on, but that's my point though. If you can't be anti-Semitic against somebody who's not Jewish.
But
in this case, anyways, about the police showing up, the police shouldn't be even showing up in the first place for what you said. In this case, they should be showing up because as you're assaulting someone, and not because of what you said, not because of the words you used, but just because of the fact that you were yelling at someone.
We go back to, I think it's worse, because the slur was made to make him seem like less of a man, to sort of dehumanize him in that way.
She didn't intend it like that, and I think intent does matter. Mark, you wanted to jump in about the thing. What was your observation about that? My only point about I don't think, by the way, I don't think people should be arrested for either, but it just seems to me an extraordinary disparity between you can just casually call somebody a and compare them to Adolf, and there's no accountability. But if you use the F word in a private text, you get arrested by 11 cops.
Yeah, we're in like 7 directions here, so I'm going to just try and in like 10 seconds deal with each one total. First, I agree that no one should be arrested for any of this speech. Let me say that. So this is not a defense of arresting people, because that keeps being said. I'm not defending that. I do think that piece is different, but it doesn't mean that it should be responded to differently. For example, you may say to me, Piers, because you're policing my speech around not using the F word or the N word or whatever, that you're a fascist. That would be a reasonable criticism. I think you'd be wrong, but I think that'd be a reasonable criticism. But you'd be saying that my behavior is actually similar to that of a particular thing. When people are looking at Donald Trump's behavior, it's not casual at all. They're saying the extraordinary and maybe historically unprecedented way that he is undermining American democracy is reminiscent of the regime. You may disagree.
You don't honestly think that.
Yeah. Well,
you honestly think Donald Trump is a.
Piers, if you allow me to finish, you'd understand that I'm not saying that. Just allow me to finish the sentence. My next sentence was, it does not matter whether you agree or disagree with the claim. The point is, I'm allowed to have a political ideology. And I wouldn't make that claim, by the way. I wouldn't call Donald Trump a. But my point is
it a
if
slur?
I believe that, and I'm
is it a slur against Donald Trump?
No.
Wow.
That's my Piers, I'm the one saying no.
Yeah, but if it's not, then you're contradicting yourself. What decides whether something is bad or not is stigma, yet stigma does not make it bad.
So it's not a slur to call somebody. It's not a slur to call somebody but it is a slur to use the F word about somebody who's not even. Explain that.
No. I can't explain what you just said because that's not the point I'm making. You've recharacterized what I said.
I'm repeating this whole time.
What I'm
How is it
saying,
not the point?
allow me to finish and you will. What I'm saying is, if you are making an analysis of somebody and you in good faith believe that their behavior, similar to if you call me a fascist, I don't think I'm a fascist, but you have a right to say that and I wouldn't call that a slur. If my behavior is reminiscent of that.
Actually, to his point, I do agree with that. Not that he's really gone out on a limb and said anything crazy. All he's really said is that if from my perspective, it logically follows, it is okay if I say such.
Similar to the or any other argument that you make. I'm not going to call it a slur just because I disagree with you. Where it becomes different is if I'm attacking somebody for their identity. Where I am insulting somebody for their identity, that becomes a slur.
See, but again, this is where he slips up. It's a real dangerous claim to make. He's then back on stigma. Initially, he denied that calling Trump a Nazi would be a slur, despite it having stigma. But now he's back and saying that stigma is what makes it a slur.
And in the last example you gave, Piers, where somebody calls somebody the F word, or somebody high-fives their friend, as my other colleague said, and gives them a high five, and they're not even, and they don't mean it that way. It may not be a slur, but you're still trafficking in homophobia. You're still trafficking in racism.
All right, Andrew.
Hang on. This isn't illogical. This is actually illogical. Listen, I'll tell you why. The reason that this is illogical is because
then allow me to respond, because every time you respond and tell me something, I don't get to respond. Go ahead.
Hang on, I understand. But the foundation of your argument is these words cause harm based on social stigma, and the social stigma is caused because you're using a harmful word. Calling people and fascist would create this exact same stigma that you're saying these other protected classes deserve. Your argument.
You know, I feel like they actually know this, and that's why they do it. I mean, of course, there is ones that are just following the herd, but the main, like, ringleaders, the ones who the others gather around, I feel like they really do understand it, and that's the intention behind it. They say it because they know that. And it's like, he probably actually, he knows this, and that's why he's saying it. Now, he can't admit to that, though, because he'd get pushback for that.
It is a contradiction. It's P and not P at the same time. It's contradictory. So either it's one or the other, Mark. Either the social stigma needs to be guarded against. Hang on. And in the UK, people are getting arrested for calling Donald Trump a as much as they get arrested for calling somebody the F slur, because the social stigma is the thing that you're after. So you have to pick one, dude.
I just want to clarify some terms. So when he says P and not P, it comes from formal logic and philosophy. P stands for any proposition, which is a statement that can be either true or false. P would be some claim. Example, it's raining. And then not P would be the negation of that claim. Example, it's not raining. Saying P and not P means asserting both a statement and its direct contradiction at the same time. This would violate the law of non-contradiction, which states that a statement cannot be both true and false in the same sense at the same time. When I say not at the same time and not in the same sense, what I'm saying is, for example, if I say that a traffic light is both red and not red, that would be a contradiction. If I say that at 5 p.m. the traffic light is red, and then at 4:59 p.m. it is not red, that would not be a contradiction. And then if I say the traffic light is red, referring to the color of the light, and it is not red, referring to the color of the body, that would not be a contradiction because it's a different sense. Now let's get back to the debate.
Pick a lane.
All right. Now, allow me to respond. Again, you have mischaracterized my argument. My point is not that social stigma is the predicate for deciding whether or not someone can say something or not. If it were, then you would be right. All words can have social stigma. I could call you a conservative,
then what is it?
And you could have a social stigma. You could call.
Then what determines
again,
it?
Allow me to finish now. Please allow me to finish. You insisted on being allowed to finish. Let me do the same.
Yeah, I know. I just want the answer, though. What could it be?
Do you think it's easy to get the answer if you let me talk or if you don't?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, what I'm saying is, again, if just all words can potentially have stigma. If you call me a bleeding heart liberal, I may find that to produce stigma for me.
And that's the point.
I'm not saying that stigma alone is the issue. Stigma is not the predicate for me. And again, I'm not making the case that anybody should be arrested for any of it because it's so gray and slippery. I'm saying don't arrest anybody for any of the slang or any of the slurs, any of the language, any of the words that are being used against people. I'm saying don't arrest anybody for any of it. But the distinction I'm making here is not one of slur versus or stigma versus non-stigma. What I'm saying is that as a community, we can certainly agree that assessing someone's behavior, even if it causes stigma, is okay. You not liking it isn't enough for me to stop saying it. What I'm saying is if we as a community decide that, hey, this particular word, this particular framework has historically caused harm to people, not based on what they believe.
So then if you're just a...
And I don't think most people even agree with that anyways. Of course, this, I think so. Well, that would imply an opinion, but you look around and you can say things and most people don't actually care. And even if they do care, most things you can say, any person you meet just outside will just move on from it pretty fast too anyways.
Majoritarian, and if the majority of people agree that it's okay, you wouldn't have a problem with it, right?
Well, not based on what they believe, not based on anything they've done, but based on a particular identity category. I'm saying we can make different decisions. We may not agree on what the decision
That's
is. That's
stigma,
okay.
though, Mark.
But
that's stigma. You are making a foundation.
Let me jump in. I want to hang on.
Stigma is not the foundation for my. Stigma is not the foundation.
You just don't realize
all words can produce. It's not.
Let me ask Andrew a question.
You don't realize it.
Let me ask Andrew a question.
That's not what it's.
Yes. I say it's not, which means it's not. Even though I'm describing that exact same thing, I'm not calling it that thing, so therefore it is not that thing.
Just repeatedly shouting it is doesn't change the fact that it's not.
I'd like
I'm
to
not
ask a
saying
question.
stigma.
Let me ask a question.
I'm stipulating.
Let me ask a question.
I'm stipulating that it can all have stigma.
Mark, let me ask you a question of Andrew, which is about free speech, but it's a different twist on it. Because it's all been very anti the UK, this debate, as indeed the debates raised in America about our free speech issues, which are legitimate. I agree. But a Reuters report recently said that more than 600 Americans were fired, suspended, placed under investigation, or disciplined by employers for comments about Charlie Kirk's assassination. That was after a review of court records, public statements, local media reports, and interviews. Some were dismissed after celebrating or mocking Kirk's death. 15 were punished for allegedly invoking karma or divine justice. 9 others were disciplined for variance on good riddance. Other offending posts appeared to exult in the or express hope that other Republican figures would be next. And we just had the president.
Well, this is also in a private company too anyways. It's what was being talked about this whole time. It was all having to do with the law, saying you shouldn't be arrested for it. And a private company in a corporation deciding they don't agree with something is entirely different from if the government says that and you're going to get thrown in jail and your whole life is ruined and because we don't like what you said.
Elect of the Oxford Union in the UK who was sort of de-presidented, removed from his presidency, which he was about to take over, because he had reacted in a sort of celebratory way when he heard the news of Charlie Kirk being shot. Now, in its way, is that not the very kind of censorship that you're talking about? Or do you think there's a line between accountability to your employers and to police criminal activity?
Yes, it's very different.
The left has been depersoning and canceling people for my whole lifetime, and it has whipped up into a fervor since Trump's election. But even pre-election, they don't just deperson you; they debank you, they deplatform you. You're not allowed to say anything. They run massive harassment campaigns. The first time I've ever seen you poke the bear, poke the bear, poke the bear, they finally did something, and all that happened was some people lost their jobs. They weren't depersoned. They weren't completely ostracized from all of regular society because they said a no-no word. These were people who were celebrating in the streets, horrific, which they likely contributed to through their own rhetoric, right? That's what actually happened there. And
language causes problems?
Hang on. All that happened here, right, was for once the right actually pushed back after you poked us enough times. So, look, am I saying that people should get fired from their jobs? No, of course not. But what I am saying is that there's a clear difference between depersoning and debanking people and ostracizing them from society completely, and an employer saying you don't represent my company very well, so you're fired. Okay. And that's the distinction.
All right, got to leave it there. Yeah, fascinating. I've got to leave it there, Mark. I'm sorry.
Pretty good discussion, I thought. I would.
Yeah, I think so too. And conversations like this are great to have. I mean, people like Andrew Wilson here really do just show the pure hypocrisy. And people like Mark, it's always lovely to see. Thank you for watching.